get started, let's head on over underneath the oak tree. What do you say? Andy, you ready? Please? Thank you very much. It's very helpful. What's your friend's name? Good morning. Love your dinosaur. What's his name?
Milo.
Milo. All right, everybody, let's come off the concrete. You can stand beneath the oak tree. Scott is here today, filming you all. If anyone doesn't want to be filmed, just say, Scott, cut it out. We will keep you out of the shot. Come on over, everybody off the concrete, onto the ground. Beneath these beautiful oak trees that we were noticing have the resurrection fern all over them. You see that fuzzy green stuff on the trees? That's resurrection fern. Since we've been getting those rains again, it was a pretty dry August. But we've been getting rains again, and so this fern that lines the oak trees is called resurrection fern because when it isn't exposed to water, it shrivels up and you can't really see it. It just looks like a brown scraggly on the tree. But when it's exposed to a nice amount of water, it springs back to life. And this plant can actually be without water for up to 40 years. And when it's re-exposed, even off of the tree, it springs back to life. So I'm glad the resurrection fern is here for us all today. So you all have caught me on a special day. Some of you, this isn't your first nature tour. Some of you it is, but I'm emotional right now. We started this program 2 years ago in the park, and it has been such a blessing. The nature tours are not ending, but this is my last nature tour, and so I'm going to give it my all today. I'm sorry, I'm emotional right now. Let's all just take a breath. Close your eyes for a moment. Feeling your feet on the ground, taking a breath. Coming into this place. And when you feel ready, you can open your eyes. Seeing all these wonderful people who've gathered here today. Some were students who graduated last night from a 12-week course. One of our students is actually going to be taking over the nature tour. She's not here today, but we'll continue with our regular schedule. So my name is Megan. I grew up here in South Florida just like Andy and Milo. And I did not have much exposure to the living world when I was growing up. I was just going through the city just like everybody else, and so I moved back to town about 3 years ago, and I moved up the road from this park. And I thought it would be great to start some programs here and to help tell the story of our place here in Florida, because Florida kind of gets a bad rep in a lot of ways. There's either the Florida man story, where we're totally crazy living with alligators, or the other story is it's very fast-paced, very materialistic, not very of the living world. But the place that we live in is truly magnificent. The reason I had you step off the concrete is because I think it's good to start on the ground here in this place. If we took away all this stuff covering the ground, we have one of the only subtropical climates in all of our landmass, the United States. So we can grow different plants here than can grow anywhere else. That being said, the life force energy of this place is also very intense. So we're going to head back into the back of the park, which kind of gives us an idea of what this place would have looked like before we started covering the ground with things. We'll see air potato at this time of year. That's that heart-shaped leaf. We'll see all the invasive plants that put on a big show during the summertime, but they'll die back in the wintertime. So this is this cycle that plays through, and right now we are in peak amount of life. And so I think it's appropriate we're standing beneath the resurrection fern, things coming back to life. So today, I'm going to present a lot of information. Don't try and remember it all. Most of all, I just want you to have fun and enjoy yourself. Pull out your binoculars just like Andy. Keep your eyes peeled, because even here in the urban environment, life still exists. And so today we're going to see some amazing special things. And we'll start in our incredible edible garden, recently renamed to the Tropical Regenerative Garden, because people walk through and they say, "Where's the food?" Because the way that we're growing in this place is not the way that we necessarily think of growing food. So when we think of growing food, we think of straight lines, we think of rows, we think of crop fields. But here, specifically in great to use the model of the food forest system. And so Leanne is on our tour guide here. Leanne runs a 4-H club. I think we have some 4-H members here as well too. And we have started a bunch of community food forests around in open lots where we're growing food in this way. So rather than growing in straight lines where we can have iguanas come attack us, too much sunlight, we're growing food in the way a forest grows food. And so this whole tiny area is packed with a bunch of edible and medicinal plants that grow well in our place. And you'll also notice we don't have any barriers and we have a lot of iguanas in the park. So how do we do that? How do we grow food in a way that is in relationship with our environment and the challenges that we have even in the middle of summer where it's so hot? And the way we can do that is by using these practices. So let's explore some of these plants. I won't tell you every plant because we'd be here all day, but if you see something special and you want to learn about it, feel free to bring it up because the way we like to do the nature tours is just by talking about what we see on that day. Let's head on over this way first. So who knows why we're called Fort Lauderdale? Anybody know?
Nope.
Guy in the back!
Some army officer was sent here to fight Indians.
Yes. So in the Seminole War, Lauderdale came on down, started a fort, Fort Lauderdale. What was the name before that guy came down? Kim! Yes. So it's actually named after this plant right here where we start with the number 1. So you're going to notice when we walk around these different areas, there's a bunch of numbered signposts. So you say, Megan, you're leaving the park. You're no longer doing these nature tours. Well, I'm passing on this legacy so you can come here anytime, not just even once a month, where you can look at these numbers and follow these self-guided tours. So right there on the post, you'll see some QR codes. We also have, if you don't want to use your phone, handouts as well too. But you can follow and learn about each plant. So we start the tour right here in Coontehatchee, which was the name of our place before it was Fort Lauderdale. So why do we name it after this plant? Well, Coonte is a very old plant. It's the only cycad native to the United States. So like Jurassic Park energy, Milo has a dino in his hand, so this was probably around at the time of that dinosaur. And so the way that this plant was eaten, and the reason it was so important is the base of it is this starchy calorie crop, kind of like arrowroot is what it was also known as. So rather than just eating fish from the river or leaves, this provided that substantial nutrition because you know when you go without bread or carbohydrates, we don't ever really feel fully full. And so prepared incorrectly, Coonte can kill you. A lot of these tropical plants can do that, but prepared correctly, it can nourish you and feed you and fill you up. And so word got out around this plant and they started pulling it up a lot. A lot of the indigenous people and settlers who moved into this place. And so this plant is also the host plant of our native butterfly, the Atala butterfly. If I have some explorers who want to come look close, sometimes when I bend down my mic gets squeaky. But this plant will have little red caterpillars on it that turn into these tiny black butterflies that are our Atala butterflies. So who likes butterflies? Me! I love butterflies. We're going to go to the butterfly garden next. But this plant is super important because who's ever planted milkweed for the monarchs at the Monarch 4-H Club? So monarchs are all across the country, but this is our special butterfly, and this is our special butterfly plant. So since we pulled up all the Coonte, the Atala butterflies are like, whoa, you took all of our food! And so when we plant this, the Atala butterflies can lay their eggs on the plant, eat it up, and keep that life cycle going. So we'll see if we see any Atalas today. But I always think it's important to start with this, to come back into our place, because growing up here, it was like a mystery coming back, trying to figure out where these names came from. If you want to learn more about our specific place as well, too, a great book just came out. It's called Legends and Lore of the New River. Who knows why it's called the New River right up the road? Do you guys live around here? So it apparently appeared overnight. So why do you think that it appeared overnight? Why do you think that legend exists? What's beneath our feet? She went all the way down. Usually people are like concrete, dirt, but yes, if we go all the way down, we have our limestone bedrock, which holds water, our aquifer system, which is where our water comes from. And so this is important to know as we move through these gardens because all these gardens you see, we're not spraying any fertilizer. We're instead using living plant foods because everything goes back into this water. So we got water underneath our feet. What happened on that one night? Maybe the earth shifted. Geologists now believe that the earth shifted and it opened up and created this river from the Everglades to the ocean. That was really important. And this is an ancient, sacred river right along the downtown Fort Lauderdale, right up the road from here. And this plant was all around it. So this plant right here is a favorite nectaring plant of many of the butterflies. This is called chaya, tropical tree spinach. So super easy to grow. You can see there's 4 down at the bottom. If you're interested in bringing this home with you, at the end of the nature tour, we'll circle back around. But how this got here was me just putting cuttings from my garden. You can see 1, 2, 3, 4. And so we'll give you a cutting just like this. When you come back to the park, you're welcome to take cuttings at any time. I really do believe that our park system should be a place where we can take these resources and expand out throughout the community. So feel free to take a cutting of the chaya, stick it in the ground, and it will grow for you. Butterflies love it, but we can love it too. Leanne had chaya growing in her house, but she said, oh, poisonous, I don't want to eat it. But now, she's chaya's biggest fan. So if you look up chaya online, not like people like chai, like chia seeds, chai latte. No, it's C-H-A-Y-A. Mayan tree spinach is another name. It's incredibly nutrient dense. You know when you get a bag of spinach and you cook it, it just dissolves into nothing? This plant holds up its quality. It's kind of rich like a collard green. Chaya. What do we see around the corner? So we see a lot of pigeon peas through here. So we were talking about living plant food. So this plant with the 3 leaves, you'll see all over the place. Who's ever had peas and rice before?
Peas and rice? You've heard of peas
So
and
this
rice?
is where peas and rice come from. Gandules is another name that they're known by. But these plants are living plant food. So not only do they provide protein to us, but they also, fix nitrogen. So this is the only sciencey part of the tour, but it's important that you know this because nitrogen is a molecule in the air, and it's what most soil is missing. And so that's what we spray on all of our plants to make them grow. But there's certain plants that have superpowers that can take this nitrogen from the air, convert it into energy, and then feed other plants around it. So during the spring, we scattered seeds all over the place. So you'll notice there's pigeon peas growing all over. Come fall, these plants will bloom. They have edible flowers. They send out little seed pods. And I encourage you to come back to the park and harvest pigeon peas. We're going to have quite a harvest up here in front. We wait for them to dry on the plant, or to be fresh, just like these seeds. But once the cycle's over, we'll cut it back, and they fed our plants all summer. Here's yucca, papaya, firebush, a native plant to our place. If you like hummingbirds, I definitely recommend planting this plant around. Hummingbirds seem to have a thing for the color red, and we seem to see them around the month of November, so we're getting pretty close. So if you're like, I gotta see a hummingbird this fall, definitely recommend planting a red plant like salvia, red salvia, or firebush right here. This plant was known as the guardian of the forest in our place, and I thought it was called the guardian of the forest because 2 mysteriously planted themselves on the front of my front yard food forest. That was the way I perceived it when I read it at first, like, oh, it's a protector. But it's a protector in other ways, too. So as we said, it's pretty crazy in the tropical jungle. So this plant can help you with poison ivy or poison oak. So it has medicine in it that counteracts those properties when they react with your skin. Also, you can see bees love it. And the berries are edible but not delicious. What do you see? That's firebush. It's pretty beautiful, huh? We got turmeric popping up all over the place. That's what that little plant is right down there. This is a baby loquat tree. Let's talk about porterweed. Will you display this with me? So who's seen this plant growing around before? Yes? So this plant is really important to know, especially at this time, because a lot of people in the islands have been using this to help with coronavirus. So you can grow it easily from these seeds, but it has a lot of antibacterial and antiviral qualities. It helps to strengthen our immune system. And so I've encouraged people to come harvest from this from the park or take seeds home with them. But I always knew this just as a butterfly plant. So it's amazing when you start to look into plants how many properties they have. So this is known as blue porterweed. It gets its name because it can make a porter-like beer with its roots. You ferment it to make a porter-like beer. But also these flowers are edible as well too. They taste like mushrooms, but Andrew doesn't like mushrooms. We were just talking about that earlier. But they're fun to garnish on top of things as well too. And it makes a lovely tea. Here's a baby loquat tree. Who's ever had a loquat before? So in Florida, sometimes we get bummed because we're like, I can't grow apples, I can't grow peaches, but there are these tropical variations that provide similar properties. And so loquat, I like to call it the Florida peach. That is a little weed. So actually our last workshop in Snyder Park is gonna be on weeds. We'll get to know some weeds while we're walking around, like Biden's over there, but I'm gonna take you into a shadier spot to do so. So we have a bunch of pigeon peas. Here's another living plant food. So you say, Megan, what are these brown leaves? They don't look so nice. So what do we do when we encounter brown leaves like this in our garden? I haven't been here in probably about 2 weeks. I see some hanging off of the papaya. What is a plant doing when it sheds its leaves like this?
Preparing the ground.
Yes. So it's kind of like us, Kim. Kim has an idea what's going on.
It's getting older.
It's getting older and it's growing. So like us, we're letting off dead weight. And so this is called Mexican sunflower. It has beautiful yellow flowers that will bloom in the fall that smell like chocolate. But I planted this plant here not only because it's beautiful, but also because it's another living plant food. And so if we buy plant food from the store, it's a blend of NPK, nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. So nitrogen is our pigeon peas. Mexican sunflower pulls phosphorus up from the soil, and potassium can come from bananas. So we'll see some bananas over there. But what I do with these leaves is, rather than taking them off and throwing them into the trash, we pull them off on our workshop days and we feed them back into the system. That's how we keep that forest system going. So rather than getting rid of things, we've somehow gotten in this cycle of blowing up our leaves, sending them off to a landfill, and we say, why can I not grow a garden? And so we have all this fertility around us, we just need to use it. And this plant specifically is a wonderful chocolate drop, is what we call it, where we chop it back and we drop it on the base of the plant. This is a little herb garden with lots of pigeon peas growing in it, butterfly pea. Leanne, what's going on behind you?
It's the beautyberry.
Yes. So beautyberry is something we're going to see in the understory as we start to move back. This is a Florida native plant. The berries are edible, but once again, not necessarily delicious. They make a nice medicinal jam though. And this plant is important because we're in mosquito season. And so this plant is a natural insect repellent. So it's pretty cool that it grows in the understory because you can take off the leaves, rub them on your skin, and it helps to protect us from insects. Wow, dragonfly. We have Jeff on the tour. Who's been noticing more dragonflies this week? Yes? So we have a theory about the dragonflies. Why do we have these sudden big bursts of dragonflies? Jeff believes it's because they're coming in on a west wind. So we had some strong winds. One night this week I didn't even have power because those big storms came through. And so those west winds coming in from the glade seem to blow in dragonflies into our place. Dragonflies are one of the oldest creatures that we see on a regular basis, like horseshoe crabs, very old. Don't see them all the time though. But dragonflies are 350 million years old and they used to be gigantic. And now they've shrunken themselves down. Why do you think they did that? We don't exactly know, but it took a lot of food to eat more as a giant dragonfly. It was on a Barbados cherry right there, so when you come back, this will be a cherry tree. We planted this a couple of months ago, but one of these cherries provides your body with all the vitamin C you need for one day. Here's another little baby turmeric. You'll see a lot of these popping up all over the place. Who's ever heard of turmeric before? So turmeric you can grow just from a turmeric rhizome from the store, same with ginger. So planting that rhizome just below the soil, it'll send up a shoot when rainy season starts, which is what we're in right now. And then in wintertime, it'll die back and you'll say, no, I killed my turmeric plant. But really the plant is just signaling you that it's time to harvest. So when the leaves die back in winter, usually around Christmas time, you dig it up and you have like quadruple the rhizome. So it's a big old turmeric lump. There's a pineapple right there. We're just coming to the end of pineapple season. Suriname cherry. Let's walk down the line. So this is some blue butterfly pea growing through here. I don't know if we'll see any flowers yet. They're getting a little shaded, but this is another nitrogen fixing plant. We got some mulberries. So down the line, we started in this garden, and the way we designed it, I hope that when you come to the park, you'd say, oh, I don't have that much space.
I found a ladybug on my leaf.
You found a ladybug? What do ladybugs do? They fly, yes. So ladybugs are a pest predator. So there's some crazy videos online of zoomed in ladybugs holding aphids, and they look like Godzilla. So aphids we're gonna see when we go to the butterfly garden. Aphids, we just taught a workshop on pests this last month. So what do we do when we experience pests in our garden? So aphids are a pest. They're a tiny little yellow bug. And so one thing you need to know about pests is that everything serves a role in the ecosystem, and they do certain things. So one pest chews, like caterpillars, they'll chew holes in things, and aphids suck. So I always say aphids suck in more ways than one, because they'll come to your plant, and what they do is they suck the sugars out of the plant, and they can kill the plant. So then, what do ladybugs do? The ladybugs come in and they eat the aphids.
Okay.
And they give us good luck, I heard too. So what we're sitting beneath is a papaya tree. Just the other day,
What do dinosaurs do?
we can just use one of these.
What do dinosaurs do?
I don't know, I think Milo probably knows that. He has a dinosaur in his
What
hand.
does dinosaur do?
They eat food.
They eat food, they definitely do.
They eat other dinosaurs.
They do. But sometimes they eat plants as well too. So this is a papaya right here. So papayas, if you want to start growing food, are a super easy thing to start growing. So papayas, how these all got here was me just scattering papaya seeds. So inside one fruit is about 500 little seeds that you can actually eat as well too, but you can also just scatter them. So papayas are actually not a tree, they're a giant herb. And the reason I have this in my hand is because if you look inside of the leaf right here, you'll see that it's hollow. So inside this trunk is actually hollow. So in order to be classified as a tree, you have to have bark. And so papayas and bananas are just giant herbs because they don't have that woody bark. You can use these as a straw, that's why I call it a straw. The other day we were having coconuts on our last day in the garden. So you can open it up like this and drink through it. And you can also make tea out of the leaves. I wash my hair with papaya leaves. It's really good in cleansing for the hair. And as we know, papaya is great for our guts as well too. And the gut is so important to being a healthy person. So papaya is easy to grow, and I brought Scott a papaya today. He's our film guy. He loves the papayas. Papayas, one last thing you need to know is there's male and female papayas, but if you come to Snyder Park, these are hermaphroditic varieties, so they're self-pollinating. So you know it's time to harvest when it starts to turn yellow. What do you see? That is a heart-shaped leaf. That looks like gotu kola. That's a weed. But what about this plant right here as well too? Do you remember that plant from the last tour? This is the sensitive plant that closes up when we touch it. So this is another nitrogen fixing plant. So rub your hand on it, Andy, like this, and see the leaves will close up. So this is a Florida native ground cover. So rather than planting grass, we can plant other things to cover the ground, like sunshine mimosa, which has a cute little pink flower that comes up that's edible, but it also fixes nitrogen. So it's feeding our mulberry tree in the middle right here. And a lot of these plants are fairly young, so we're planting flowers. Loofah's flowering up there. See that yellow flower up there?
Oh my god, I never seen that flower.
So loofahs, a lot of times when we see a loofah sponge, people will say, oh, I thought that came from the ocean. And sponges do come from the ocean. But this is a plant that we can grow super easily, that we can actually eat when they're young. They're in the same family as cucumbers and squash. So this flower will be pollinated by a bee, hopefully, and it will drop down this fruit that looks like a cucumber. So you can eat it when they're young, but if you leave it on the plant, it grows very big and starts to become kind of woody inside. And when it turns brown, we crack off the husk, and we have our own sponges that we can compost as well too. So rather than putting them in the landfill, we can send them back into the system. I believe Made in Broward sells loofahs, is that right? All right, let's see what else we got. So down the line here was a bunch of oleander, which
What's
is a...
that called? What's that?
It's called loofah.
Loofah.
Loofah. So we got some bananas here. I think we got a rack of bananas coming in. We do, and it's a nice one. See our bananas? They've grown since last you were here. So a lot of times people will grow bananas and they'll say, I got a dud. I bought this banana at the store and it's not a good banana. But what you need to know about bananas is bananas love to be fed. And so what do we feed bananas? We don't need to go to the store to feed bananas. What are bananas' favorite food? Our dead stuff in our garden. So what we can do is create something called a banana circle. So we have 2 banana circles right here. And when we come through the garden and we have excess biomass, which is just dead stuff, we'll put it at the center of our banana circle. And since we're in the park, we cover it up with mulch as well too. But if you're in your garden, you don't have to worry about it. You can just drop it on in. But we're going for aesthetics here. We want it to be clean and tidy. But that will feed our banana plant. And so what happens is it's going down, breaking down. We were talking about mushrooms before. So it's breaking down. What do you need to tell me? I want to eat those bananas. They aren't ready yet, so how do we know when a banana's ready? You can eat them green. Yeah. So if we took the green banana off the plant, we couldn't just bite right into it, but we can boil green bananas. They're delicious. But we know this rack is ready to harvest when it starts to turn yellow at the bottom. And so bananas, how they propagate themselves is through these daughter plants or sister plants, pups. So if you look around the base of the bananas that we'll see, there's little babies coming up from the side. So to keep the cycle going with the bananas, we're feeding them, which keeps that moisture and fertility in. And then once this banana produces a rack, we'll cut back that plant, we'll drop it back onto the bananas, and then these baby plants will carry on the story. Does that make sense?
How do you cut it down?
Machete.
A machete.
Yes. So bananas are very sticky. They have a latex inside of them. So just clean your machete afterwards or have a specific banana machete. But yeah, all you'll do is have a nice sharp machete, chop it down at the base, and then chop it up into pieces, and you'll see inside of the banana it's these wrapped up leaves. And so it's very nutrient dense, so you can use it in your garden as well too. In regenerative agriculture, it's very much loved at this time because bananas grow so easily, especially during the summer, and you can chop them back and use them to feed your other plants to bring that potassium. We're gonna see caterpillars in the butterfly garden in a second. Do you know what this is, Andy? This is a pineapple. So if you guys want to plant pineapple, all you got to do is take your pineapple top off the pineapple from the store and stick it in the ground like this. And how long does it take to grow a pineapple? Does anybody know? Long time. Sometimes a year to a year and a half. They fruit in the summer, so we're just coming out of pineapple season. But man, a homegrown pineapple cannot be beat. And they're also super low maintenance. You don't have to do anything. Literally just stick your top in the ground, come back a year and a half later, and you got a pineapple. They're in the same family as bromeliads, which is a common landscaping plant. We put bromeliads all over the place, but these are like edible bromeliads. I'm always looking for plants that we can eat. This plant behind me, someone give it a scent test. Crush it in your hand. What's it smell? She knows. So this is lemongrass, super easy to grow. Got a little haircut before our grand opening recently. So lemongrass is a grass, so we can cut it back all the way to the base. And lemongrass has so many uses to it. Lemongrass is a calming nervine, so it helps us to relax our nervous system. It also is a natural insect repellent. It can help break fevers and is super easy to grow in our place. So lemongrass, recommend it. And if you want to bring home lemongrass with you today, come up to me after the tour. And the way we propagate it is through these little clusters at the base. So we'll pull off one of these, we'll cut off the top, you'll make some tea with it this weekend, and then you'll stick that little rhizome in the ground, and you'll have your own lemongrass. That's how these got here, was just by sticking little ones in the ground, into the planter. But the reason we did this is to show you, you can grow an abundance of things even in a small space. So at the center of this one is a mamey. Who's ever had mamey before? It looks like a football. So we planted a mamey seed, but it's gonna take a long time till we get mamey fruit. So around it is papaya, which only fruit for about 2 to 3 years, pigeon pea, which we'll have a harvest from and will feed our soil, and lemongrass, which we can enjoy until it's time to eat the mamey. So that's that food forest model where we're stacking things and getting many yields out of one small space. More bananas. We got a Malabar chestnut down at the end. Who's ever had a monarch? We gotta go over to the butterfly garden now. Let's go on over. I gotta tell you guys about, actually while you're sitting here in the shade, I wanna tell you a story before we go. So I know that Andy likes butterflies. Who else likes butterflies? Yes, I love butterflies. The reason I'm here today is because of butterflies. Like I said, I was just going through the motions like everybody else in the city, and then I brought home a milkweed plant and everything changed. I was like, whoa! I know, so the monarch's like, you gotta tell the story. And so I brought home this milkweed plant and I started to become enchanted by the process of what happens. And so who's ever seen the life cycle of a butterfly play out? So what's going on? A butterfly, that monarch who's flying around, if it's a she or a he, if it's a she, she'll lay her eggs on her host plant. So if you want to attract butterflies into your life, all you need to know is host plant and nectar plant. So we were talking about Kunti, that's the host plant for our Atala. Milkweed is the host plant of our monarch. So I brought home a milkweed and I became enchanted by this process, and I learned so many lessons from these caterpillars. We won't go into all of them, but all this to say, it's truly magnificent to witness this life process that takes place all around us all the time. So butterflies are really important because they help to pollinate our plants, but they're also just amazing to watch transform as well too. So we're gonna go through the butterfly garden now. I won't go over all the plants once again, but if you see a specific plant, I'll point out some host plants. So if you want that specific butterfly, you have to plant its host plant. But if you want them to stick around, we have to have nectar plants. So once they turn into a butterfly, they can nectar on all sorts of different plants. So we'll see a variety of both as we move through the butterfly garden, but move slowly through the butterfly garden as well too. We'll see if we see any caterpillars. Andy, you bring your binoculars, see if we can see some. But it's amazing how much can go on even in this little island. Butterfly escaped? I like your leaf in your hat. And after this, we're going to be in the shady hammock. So bear with me on the sun, embrace it. We're Floridians. We're soaking it up. It feels good.